don't
I
watch yours.
watch your podcast, but yours is the one I have to be careful when I watch because you've got that dog on there, and my dog attacks my furniture when he sees
does your dog
dogs.
Mine does that. Mine does that too.
James, if you could ever post a video of your dog reacting to my dog, that would mean the world to him because he's a big Ozu fan. Hey, welcome back to the ScreenCrush Crossover Universe podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Heather Antos.
I'm here with my co-host, Ryan Airy.
Today's a big day, guys. We're going to hop right to it. We did an interview with James Gunn.
I've heard of him.
He's kind of a big deal in some circles. I just want to say two things. We're going to talk about the interview after you guys watch it, but I want to say two things. One, quality. We did it on Zoom, so the quality's a little bad at the start. Sorry about that, but it's James Gunn, so it's worth it. And two, there's a special guest star we didn't expect to see, who we're going to talk about what it was like to see him after you watch this. Let's go.
James, with Peacemaker's finale, spoiler warning for the Peacemaker finale, it's we're really seeing your first foray into the DC multiverse, and what it ended up being was like one nightmare dimension after another. We had a Nazi world, we had imps that eat your face, we had zombies, giant skull spiders, and now what seems like Darkseid's training ground with some parademons in the trees.
Well, I wouldn't go. Okay, don't.
I almost tried to catch you there.
Don't expect too much. I mean, I think it's like, don't expect that to be exactly what it is. Like I said, I was just saying to somebody, so when I read Salvation Run, I really liked the idea of Salvation Run. I liked the idea of supervillains building a society in this other dimension. And I liked the way that it was a very practical way that Amanda Waller and Rick Flag Jr. in that instance were trying to deal with the problem of metahumans who continuously escape from prison in a way that I think a fed up government might. Those were the things that interested me. And one of the most fascinating things to me was in starting to deal with the larger overall story that I'm talking about doing, was reading that George R.R. Martin was the guy who came up with Salvation and what his concept was, which seemed to be much closer to what interested me about the project.
So nothing yet as to whether this training ground or this planet may be a Darkseid connection.
That's right.
Are you sure?
I know a lot of your earliest influences were films like Night of the Living Dead and a lot of horror. I mean, your background with Slither and Belko Experiment, which, by the way, my best friend and her husband named their dog Belko after that movie.
Oh my God.
So it's their favorite film. But I would love to know how your background with horror influences your work in the DCU.
Well, here's the truth. I think my love of horror comes from a love of monsters. So when I was a little kid, I loved like the universal horror movies like Frankenstein and the Werewolf. But a lot of this was really out of falling in love with the other, the monster, the strange, the disfigured, the unusual, the oddball, And so I think that finding my way into horror as an adult was a way of expressing that. And in DC, it actually gets more to the point of what I really love, which are horror elements I really like. I like the horror elements, but I'm a much bigger monster fan than I am a horror fan. And the truth is, so many of the characters from King Shark to Weasel to whomever they're monsters. And that's what I really am most interested in.
Kind of to that point, you did something interesting in Salvation. You specifically mentioned metahumans are getting sent there and not just villains. So I guess my question is that intentional? And if it is,
that was not intentional. I think that we see in episode 8, Rick Flag's intention is 100% to send metahuman villains to Salvation. That's his intention. Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's his intention. Okay. And also, of course, it's a nice backdoor for him to screw over the guy that killed his son.
Yeah. It's interesting to hear you talk about the how that book is about them building a society, and especially the Joker versus Luthor stuff. I mean, two absolute polar opposites. I guess, how are you going to be seeding this throughout other projects? Like, are we going to see more villains sent there? Are we going to see them on Salvation forming the society?
I think I really like it's. I want to give you answers, but like, so it's like, it's not about, I mean, it really is about, you got to remember the first and foremost thing is that I'm building a world, okay?
Right.
And in that world, an aspect of that world is now obviously Argus, who are in charge of metahuman activities, have taken it upon themselves to start sending metahuman prisoners to Salvation. That's the plan, at least. And then we'll have to see how that affects and touches everything else. And one of our primary DCU characters, one of the people that's one of the more popular characters now in the DCU, is there, which is Peacemaker.
In the commentary for Superman, you mentioned the black hole, and you mentioned where does Ultraman go next? In your mind, do black holes lead to other universes? And is Salvation Planet, is that in another universe, or is it in the cosmos of this universe of the DCU?
The Salvation is in another. It's in a totally different universe. So that you can't just get on a ship and fly, 20 million light years and get to Earth. It's just not going to happen. It's a dimensional place, and there's so many dimensions that I think it makes it almost impossible for anyone to figure out a way to get from one to the other. That isn't by chance, which is what it was in this situation. I mean, the connection into Salvation. And
could Ultraman perhaps be in that other dimension where Salvation is?
He could be, but that would be quite a huge coincidence.
If I ask, I'm not expecting you to reveal if Darkseid is in the show or not. I would never, ever expect to put you in that position, but I am curious what you think about Darkseid as a character, in the comics, or what makes him compelling to put in stories.
I think okay, first of all, there's Kirby's whole world, which he created, which is totally fascinating. So that's a huge part of it. It's the new gods in general that is, to me, so interesting, which we're dealing with Mr. Miracle. And I have the screenplay that I haven't read yet on my shelf right now. So there's that aspect of it. And then there are aspects of Darkseid as in Thanos are obviously very similar. They look very similar. And because of that, I think that, to give you probably more than an answer than you expected, I don't, using Darkseid as the big bad right now is not necessarily the thing. Because, for a lot of reasons, because Zach did it so cool in his way. And because of Thanos and Marvel,
I thought Mr. Miracle was a TV series. Is it a screenplay now? Is it a show?
No.
Is it a film?
No. Did I call it?
Okay.
Yeah.
You did. Yeah. And, we hang on everything you say and parse it out, so we can you can't say anything without us
believe
going,
me.
well, Batman 2 takes place in the DCU guys.
I saw my conversation in the car in Mexico at 8 a.m. that every month made such a big deal about that I didn't even see till after this. I was asking people, 2 days before the episode came out, I saw a bunch of people saying, "What's the big cameo going to be?" And I was like, "What do you mean the big?"
Sorry, Eric.
The cameo is Lex. It's the biggest actor we have in the DC. Mr. Miracle's a TV show. Supposedly the first episode is really good. I just haven't read it yet. I've been working on Creature Commandos this morning.
Why, you busy or something?
Yeah, I know.
James, I wanted to ask you, now that you're studio head, you're kind of in a position to where, every word you say is being quoted as some kind of news or being pulled apart. We're so used to every summer having studio heads from other franchises out there with their big slate reveal, calendar dates, years in the future. Is that something you plan to do, or do you have a different plan? Do you look at things like Comic-Con as an opportunity to explain your plans to the fans, or do you like doing things like smaller social media releases?
I think it's a case by case basis. But I think the one thing I've sort of found in my time, both making movies and being somewhat in the public eye, is that it just depends on the situation. Sometimes you really benefit from, going to Comic-Con and spending, millions of dollars and selling, an idea, especially when you have a great trailer or something like that. But other times, I post a picture of the cover of a screenplay on Instagram for $0, and it's equally effective. It gets just as much press. So you have to kind of always ask yourself, what is it that's worth spending money on? And the truth for me is a lot of what the hard thing for me is I just don't have much time, So, like, to be completely honest, I really appreciate what you guys have done with the show and everything. I appreciate your shows. I think they're fun to watch, whether about my stuff or something else. And so this was my idea to do, a handful of people whose stuff I enjoy and say, let's give them a little bit of time, because I appreciate it. And
We
you
appreciate that.
make
Thanks,
this.
My gosh, thank you so
Yeah.
much.
I was
So like that's why I'm doing this. But my time gets crazy, and so you think about, I live in Georgia. I'm gonna fly out to Comic-Con for these days that could be spent doing another draft of Man of Tomorrow, and I'm like, oh, I don't know, because what matters to me at the end of the day is quality.
We, like you said, we have a lot of fun theorizing different villains, different things, this, boom tubes, etc. One thing that really surprised me and that I loved about this season of Peacemaker is it seems like, used to the TV we're used to, where the heroes discover the evil dimension, they liberate the dimension, they get to leave, everybody's happier because that's not the 11th Street Kids.
Yeah.
And I loved that you completely subverted my expectation. Was there ever a point when you said, should they help the people? Should they stop the Nazis? Like, how did that come about, that?
Yeah, there was at one point, I think I mentioned this on our podcast, there was a point in which there was more of a story there which would be fun to tell. I just didn't have enough episodes to tell the story, and so, but liberate the country. They're 4 guys, they're 5 people.
Right. And they barely count as 5 people.
They really, you got Judo Master, maybe he counts as 2 people, so it's like, they're not, they're people. I think that for me, the real important thing, again, for the whole season was the emotional crux of where we were going with these characters. And really, the thing of subverting expectations in that way, of creating a story that was a superhero show that ended up being completely about one person's journey and his inability to accept who he is as a human being. And secondarily, 2 other people's journeys really strongly, Adebayo's and Harcourt's, that were entwined with that story. That was what most interested me, and was allowing the other stuff to take a background to that. But also, the stuff about the Nazi dimension was, from a personal standpoint, it was about those characters. It was about Harcourt and Economos especially, who have been sort of tools of the system for a long time, who don't really haven't acted with much morality, despite except for what they did at the end of the Suicide Squad, sort of protecting those guys. They are at their hearts good people, but they aren't heroes in the typical sense. And when Augie gives his speech to Amelia Harcourt, I get why there's a debate over who Augie is. And I can see how I'm like Augie in a lot of ways. Like, yeah, you just kind of live in the system, and you give money to the people that you want to give money to, and you do what you can do to be nice and to cause social change in an everyday way, in the small ways that you can, but you can't destroy the system. But there's other people out there who are much more courageous, who are doing everything they can to make this world a better place. And I think that Harcourt especially, but also Economos, hear that speech and they realize that they are exactly the same as Augie. And I think their choice at the end of 8 is a choice to be something much more than that and to really put their asses and themselves on the line in the most drastic and extreme way possible. And that's what their story is for me.
Well, beautifully said. But can GI Robot at least go into that dimension? We're done. It's the number one thing.
Believe me, if I knew how popular GI Robot was, you have to remember I wrote all this stuff at the same time. It was already finished from Creature Commandos. Superman Peacemaker was already done. And in fact, the next few things were already planned out by the time, I shot this stuff.
Right.
I know that GI Robot was going to become the sort of icon that he's become. But I know now, I can tell you, so we're dealing with him. We're dealing with him. I'm being really sincere. I really do appreciate what you guys are doing. I can't believe how smart your stuff is, how fun it is to watch, and I really appreciate it. So thank you so much.
And welcome back, Heather. That was a day yesterday when we filmed that, huh?
We talked to James Gunn.
We talked to James Gunn.
That's
and
wild.
He was normal. Like, I've done these interviews before. Yeah. Everybody's usually guarded. Yeah. He's just in a room, probably in his house, and was just a regular, amazing dude. See, I'm talking about James Gunn, so I can't help but curse. I will say, so when we got in the room, we knew ahead of time we were getting 10 minutes, and I wasn't sure if you could be on or if, Lee, our producer, could be on.
We had to get Doug clearance. It was a
we had to get.
Yeah.
And that was a nightmare because, and this is the part of the interview I can't get out of my head, when James said he gets in trouble when he puts us on because his dog Ozu attacks the screen when he sees Doug. And Ozu's the basis for Crypto, which means Crypto's a fan of Doug's. Yep. And I'm just like, that I don't remember the interview. I got to rewatch it. But that's the part that I, last night I'm putting together a greenhouse and I thought, wow, Ozu knows Doug. That was the part of it that just seemed so surreal.
I think honestly, that is one of my favorite things about doing these podcasts and these interviews with you is you get to let out your inner fan in a way that you don't normally get to do on the channel normally. And it's just I remember, when we got Mark Waid, right? That was a huge moment for you. And
I didn't even talk to him about Daredevil. I was just like, this Mark Waid.
I know. And
Mark Waid. I mean, Sevo Hani in our first one was weird. I mean, that was you've made some of the best movie I've seen this year.
James, I mean, I say this all the time about James, love his movies, hate his movies, whatever your opinion is on his films, he is such an arbiter of fandom in film. And he really is a fan first and makes these for fans. And I think that was one of the moments in the interview that really resonated with me was his particular fandom of the ScreenCrush channel and New Rockstars and all of that stuff. Yeah. So, he's just as much of a supporter of what we do and what we all make and everything as much as we are of him. And that, I think that really showed through.
Yeah. So when we did the interview, I was surprised that Eric was there because normally it's 10 minutes and it's your outlet and blah, blah, bblah. So we had structured out a plan. We had you and I debated on whether or not your question should go at the top or later. And it was a great question. So we put it at the top. It worked. It was such a good question. Whereas I'm like, is Darkseid in it? You're like, let's do my shit. So I was surprised to see Eric. And, we make fun about the rivalry between us and Heavy Spoilers and Rockstars. But I've had drinks with Eric. We live on different coasts, so I don't see him all the time. But we're, of course, friendly because who else can relate to what we do for a living, And I texted him call me. Because it was literally seeing him as that It's Always Sunny meme where Charlie and Max see each other from across the restaurant. So we talked about how to do this. And I was like, yeah, use us and we'll use you. And let me know if you want me to come on or you can come on here or whatever. But we're on different coasts, so that's probably not going to work out. But yeah, so it was cool to see him. And then his first question was basically what we were doing.
I cackled. like, you probably see it in the video too, like me react of like, of course Eric is asking the same stuff that Ryan, because your brains work the same, you know, and of course me being the creative, I'm just like, I want to know about your influences.
Right. Well, and when I talked to him after, to Eric, I said, because I stopped watching other channels because I just feel bad about myself because their videos are so good. Like, I watched Paul's breakdown of The Empire Strikes Back. I felt like shit afterwards. I watched...
Ryan, your videos are good too.
They are. And I know that, but I know that even more when I do, because New Rockstars, like, I think the last thing I watched consistently was Agatha Hall Long, which is so good. And I was like, I can't do this. You know what I mean? So I was like, did you guys talk a lot of Darkseid? I had no idea. So he's like, yeah, we did. And so we, obviously, like, you're setting up Salvation, but his first question was my favorite one that I came up with, which was, what made you want to do Salvation?
Yeah.
And he gave that great answer about Game of Thrones, or George R. R. Martin. And obviously, we knew he wasn't going to be like, oh, you guys didn't hear we cast Wonder Woman and Batman. We weren't going to get that kind of news out of him. So it was cool just to get... He loves talking about his creative process. So hearing about the 11th Street Kids and the end of Peacemaker, just the fact that he knew who we were. You know what really got me in the interview was when I mentioned the thing about the 11th Street Kids not going back to Nazi world, and he explained how could they do that, like we just talked about. And then I had that one off about G.I. Robot, and he was so down just to talk about G.I. Robot. Like, he's a nerd who loves to get into the weeds on comic material and stuff like that. Like, he's just... he's one of those artists. He reminds me of like Wes Anderson. You know, we have very few filmmakers in this corporate world who can put out something and you go immediately, you know who that is, you know, almost from one scene. He's a great guy. I hope you guys enjoyed watching it because it was surreal getting the email. I thought it was a prank. Like, I swear to God, because when I logged in, even when getting the email, oh, we're from James Gunn, people, I'm like, okay, so you're Paul from Heavy Spoilers has clearly set this up, right? But I told people about it and like, okay, I'm sure it's legit. I looked up the email from a publicist, but you don't know this, but Paul does prank people like really bad. One time he was like, oh, I got a screener for the Book of Boba Fett, and he made a fake screenshot and a fake email from Disney to show me. Like, he did everything. He used a shot from the trailer, and he's like, this is Dr. Afra, and it's weird that she's not Asian. Like, he makes this whole backstory. You know what I mean? Like, he did this whole thing and completely fooled me. And since then, I've never believed anything that's ever happened to me ever, because he will prank me. So when I logged in and I saw Eric first, I thought, that son of a bitch. And then I looked up in the corner and I saw this guy.
I was also confused because I had never like met Eric personally before. You know, I've seen him on the YouTubes, obviously, but we've never met at a con or anything. And I had no idea that, like, you know, he knew who I was or anything. So I hopped on and he's like, oh, hey, Heather. Like, he like right away, James Gunn is on the screen and Eric is talking to me and I'm just like, what is happening?
And that's the funny part. I was more like, oh my God, Eric, hi. And I don't think we were recording yet. And somebody was like, well, James Gunn's here too. And I'm like, well, I see James Gunn on the podcast every week. I never see Eric. And I thought, well, now it sounds like I don't watch New Rockstars, which I don't, but only because I feel bad about myself when I do. And I just immediately was caught in this like circle of awkwardness and ADHD tendencies. And I could feel my twitch coming back and like all this weird shit from that, man. But and I, you know, like, also in what we do, you and I probably could have, especially you, could have been like, oh yeah, so I also know what Tom King smells like. You know, like, because, you know, like, you just move in the same circles. That's always my question when somebody
What does someone smell like?
What do they smell like? Because, you know, you can't get that from the TV.
That's true. You can't.
So I want to know, like, what they smell like.
Yeah, we'll go back to smell-o-vision. They just didn't perfect it.
They got to do something because the movie theater industry is not doing well. But on that note, I think we should wrap up and have this conversation on our next podcast episode. And thank you guys so much. You know, we're doing the Crossover Universe podcast every weekly-ish, depending on the guests that we get. It's right after Comic-Con season, so we're starting to book more people. We have a lot of fun. Me, Heather, special guests. We've had some big names. We've had some names you probably should have heard of, but you haven't. So subscribe on all your podcast platforms if you want to listen to us. Heather, thanks again for joining me.
Thank you, Ryan. This is so fun.
Yeah.
We talked later.